during this budget, actually the government increased the duty of imported vehicle units from 25% to about 35%, about 10% increase, and that has led to the shooting of the prices of vehicles that are imported in the country. One of the reasons the government did that is to support local assembly farms and also make the local investment in the vehicle industry locally assembled, vibrant, and also target some taxes there as well. But this has had a ripple effect, and now we are joined by Eric MWANGI, who is the CEO MARIDADY Motors. Karibu sana, Eric.
Thank you so much, my brother NJUE, for having me here at KBC.
You're welcome. Now, I've noticed if you go to any car bazaar, and even if you check online, the prices of vehicles has steadily increased. A good example is the Pro Box, from around 900,000 to around 1 point something, 1.2, 1.3 million shillings. This has quite affected the market. How has it affected you as one of the guys who are dealing with second-hand vehicles and more or less imported vehicles?
Thank you so much for your question. Of course, any price increment creates a level of dissonance in the market before customers fully accept the new price. And you ought to remember that we were coming from the COVID season, where prices for motor vehicles had been affected by other factors. We all know that production of brand new vehicles was highly affected during the COVID season, and therefore it meant that there was already a shortage of brand new cars, and therefore a lot of people in the developed world were holding on to their old vehicles. You ought to remember that the only way we get good supply of used or pre-owned vehicles from the markets that we buy from, we are able to get this supply because people are able to get new cars in their market, and therefore they release the old ones. Now with COVID, what it means is that many people are still holding on to the cars they were using, they were not releasing them for sale, and therefore we had a low supply in the auctions, and these had already affected the prices, what we call, because the pricing of the vehicle has 3 or 4 major components. We have what we call the CIF component. This is cost, insurance, and freight. This is the cost of the vehicle in the country of origin. And therefore that price had already gone up because of COVID, the effects of COVID. Now when you top up with increased shipping costs, and now you bring an increased taxes, of course we are looking at a change of price that is significant to the mind of the consumer, and this definitely slows the demand a bit.
And I'm looking at the statistics here in the country, and we do import about 81,000 pieces of vehicles in the country each and every year, against an local assembly of about 34,000, more or less 2.5 times. And now the ban actually discourages a lot of people from bringing in a lot of vehicles to the country because actually of the cost, and the cost is going to be passed down to me who is buying or to a consumer. How is it going to affect the revenue as well? KRA also wants to get something there.
Very good question and very varied. I think there's a need for government, and I'm very happy because the government of the day seems to be a bit more open to listening to business communities. And when it comes to the motor vehicle sector, we are classified into 2. We have the people that deal in brand new vehicles, some of them locally assembled, and then we have category 2 where we belong, those of us that actually deal in pre-owned vehicles. And before we can talk about any ban for used cars or pre-owned vehicles, we ought to ask ourselves the fundamental question of why. Why do Kenyans prefer to buy pre-owned vehicles? You've laid out some statistics, because data shows that about 85% of the Kenyan market prefers to buy pre-owned or what we call used vehicles. We need to ask ourselves, why do they prefer to buy pre-owned vehicles? And Troy, the truth of the matter is that they incline much more to the pre-owned vehicles because that is what they can afford. Truth of the matter is that any one of us, every human being, if given an opportunity to buy between a brand new car and a used car, if they could afford, they would definitely want to buy a brand new vehicle. So the reason why many people buy pre-owned vehicles is because that is what they can actually be able to afford. But then we are also looking at the need for other things in the economy. There is need to create jobs. Of course, the manufacturing sector is very, very promising, and the auto sector can be able to create a lot of jobs. But we ought to remind the people that are thinking for the government not to presume that the pre-owned motor vehicle sector has not created any jobs. There is a lot of employment that has been created by the people that deal in used vehicles, and therefore we ought to strike a balance, because all of us are children of the government. Whether somebody is in the industry for brand new vehicles or somebody is in the industry for pre-owned vehicles, all of us are children of the government, and the government therefore has to come up with policies that are favorable to all its children, those that want to manufacture and those that want to deal in used vehicles. We all ought to be encouraged because in one way or the other we contribute to the growth of our economy.
And let's look at that official data. I remember in the year 2022, the then Treasury CS Ukur Yatani was trying to push for the ban on minibuses, which of course we are using here in the country as matatus mostly. And that did go quite well, but the aim of the government back then was to more or less promote the local companies that are assembling vehicles here and also make the industry a little bit vibrant. Do you think this is a good idea at the moment?
Well, some ideas sound very good on paper, but when you take them to the ground, they fail the test of time. And I think the good example is the one that you have given for matatus, whereby, there was a policy that wanted to outlaw every single matatu on the road that, is below the capacity of that 5-seater. But Troy, we need to understand that the market is driven by its needs, by its own needs. Yeah, the market is driven by factors like what can people afford and what can't people afford. Sitting down in a boardroom to come up with a policy that say that anybody that wants to invest in a matatu can only invest in a matatu that carries 35 people. Sounds brilliant, it sounds smart, it sounds progressive, but when you take it to the ground, it doesn't work because we ought to understand, for example, now, if you look at how the transport sector, the public transport sector is organized, if, for example, you're looking at a bus that carries people from CBD, Nairobi, and it takes them to, say, Embu town. Now, it is possible for you to have a high-capacity vehicle in that particular route because you have many people moving from Nairobi to a place like Embu. But how about Embu to a smaller town? You will find that in that particular scenario, you cannot be able to work with a high-capacity vehicle. So even after sitting down to come up with policy, and even though we recognize the need and the desire for the government to advance, how we do things, I think it is going to be absolutely necessary for the people in government to be able to consult the people on the ground and be able to ask, is this what you need? Is this what the market can be able to afford? So that we do not end up coming up with policies that look good on paper, they look smart on the boardroom, but when you take them to the ground, they actually fail the common sense test.
All right, and because of the interest of time, I will switch to electric vehicles. Quite the uptake, and even the hybrid vehicles, the uptake has not been quite what we expected. And bearing in mind that we are also conserving the environment, the uptake has been quite slow, and especially not only in Kenya, but in developing countries. What do you think this is the reason?
Oh yeah, trust me, I have been to very many different countries, and we've had these conversations with players in the automotive sector of electric vehicles and how long we think it will take for the world to fully migrate to electric vehicles. And the truth of the matter is that it's going to be a journey. It's going to be a process. It's not going to be, making a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. And the reason is because of different factors. Number one, you're looking at, user acceptability. An individual today expects their vehicle to function in a very, very in a mechanical way as we speak. And I would give you a very, very simple example that a lot of users complain about. Electric cars are too quiet. The revving of the engine that we are used to, that your own psychology, when you go and you start your engine and you hear that sound of the engine, as you accelerate, you hear the revving of your engine, you will be shocked to discover that while there are some people that can be able to afford an electric vehicle, such a small issue, such a feature like, how does my vehicle interact with me as I drive it is going to influence which vehicle they actually buy. So one of the challenges that we have with the electric vehicles is that they haven't sold themselves enough to the users. The users are still not used. The current generation of drivers are not used to electric vehicles. Now, we also have challenges with market support. You buy an electric vehicle today, there is the question of where are you going to charge it? We all understand that electric vehicles have what we call a range. This is the distance it covers before on a full charge battery. If you charge it and it's full, how many kilometers does it take you for? And you will find that the longer the range, the more expensive it is. And you will find that what a market like the African market can be able to afford for electric vehicles would be what we call short-range electric vehicles. These are cars that need to be charged maybe after every 100 or every 200 kilometers. So a user will be asking themselves, if, for example, I take my electric vehicle and I go to Nakuru or to Nyeri or to Nanyuki, wherever your Ushago is, where are you going to charge it in your Ushago? And this issue of market support, the lack of infrastructure to support electric vehicles is one of the things that is going to affect demand in a very, very big way.
Yeah.
Now, also, Troy, there is the issue of financing. You know, many people acquire their vehicles on financing, bank financing, and this drives demand in very big ways. There is the question of, are the financiers receptive to financing electric vehicles? I am sure you have seen online on social media platforms a lot of people complaining about, you know, being unable to support their electric vehicles. So you will find that unless all these things, all these factors are actually addressed, then we do not have proper incentives in the market for people to consume electric vehicles. If you go to countries like China, you will find that one of the reasons why many people prefer to consume electric vehicles is because it comes with a lot of, you know, tax incentives. You pay less taxes, you have advantages when it comes to parking, you pay less for parking, and unless we address all these things, I think the common Kenyan doesn't have a lot of incentives to buy an electric car today.
All right, in 30 seconds, kindly, as we wrap up, tell us something about diversification. I've seen companies who sell motor vehicles are diversifying into other fields. You're also done a SACCO, maybe because of diversification, the low, the weak shilling, and all the semantics working around that.
Thank you so much, Troy. Of course, for business survival and growth, you've got to diversify. At MARIDADY Motors, we are evolving into a holistic motor dealership. We are focusing on car care. We have a brand that we call Sparkling Motor Spa, whereby we are able to clean vehicles for people that already have cars. Because, you know, a lot of customers that we would sell vehicles to would always come back and ask us, where do I clean my vehicle? We have about 6 branches for our car washes.
Yes.
Now, we also have an in-house SACCO, whereby we can help you to finance your vehicle. We have an investment cooperative. This is for people that want to make money in the auto industry. They can be able to tap into the industry of motor vehicles by joining our investment cooperative. And of course, we have a driving school whereby we train people to become competent, safe drivers.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eric MWANGI, who is the CEO of MARIDADY Motors. There we are looking at the vehicle industry field and also the electric vehicle.